Hi there, I'm Jane Wilkinson. Whoa, falling over. Hi there, I'm Jane Wilkinson and I'm the Climate Change Training Officer for Forward Cooper Angus, and I'm here today showing you how to coppice and harvest willow. The willow that we're harvesting, it's Salix viminalis, common osier. It's good for making coracles, willow fences and plant supports in the garden, so for big stuff. And we're in the middle of winter. It's a cold, wet day in January, which is an ideal time for actually harvesting the coppice in the willow. You want to be doing it when the leaves are off and the sap's down, and it's not liable to grow. That's it. Yeah. So these are the tools that I'll be using to do the coppicing. Mostly the secateurs for anything that's pencil thickness or below, loppers for thicker stuff, 1.5 inches up to 1.5 inches thickness, and then a little pruning saw or a Bako Bushman saw, the triangular little bow saw for cutting bigger stuff. Here you can see the coppice stools that haven't been cut yet, and if I go in closer, there is a mix of thin and thicker material, and I always go in and take the thin stuff out first, the thin shoots or withies out first, followed by the thicker stuff, and then I might even take the bow saw to the thick central trunk there and pollard that into a mini pollard, which will be cut down at knee height. So I'll just demonstrate that. So the coppicing takes place at winter time, which is why I'm in all these layers, and you cut back the thin stuff first of all with the secateurs. And you must have really sharp tools. There's no point doing this job with blunt tools because you will rip the bark, and that's then what leads to infection getting in and the coppice stool dying back. So you have to make sure you have nice sharp tools. You then come in with the loppers, and so having removed some of the thin stuff, it means that you can get in to harvest the big branches now, the larger branches. Again, nice sharp tools. And the aim with any of this cutting is that you ultimately cut as close to the main trunk or stem as you can. What we don't want is to leave a lot of these little hat pegs, these little kind of protruding pegs, because they will lead to infection. What will happen is each one of these will produce shoots. So if you've got a lot of thin pegs all producing shoots, you get you get a lot of poor growth on the coppice stool. What you want is just 1 or 2 thick main trunks or branches, and so you will get a smaller amount of wands or willow withy rods coming off the coppice stool, but they'll be better quality, they'll be more vigorous, they'll be healthier. So we carry on cutting. Once you've cut the branches off, you can get in a bit closer with your loppers. So you might have to do a second cut in order to get right in and cut nice and close, like that, to the main stem, because that's what you're wanting to do. I'm just cutting down all these like hat pegs, these little thin stems with the secateurs. I'm removing all the leaf litter from the cut stump, from the coppice stool. I'm taking out all the dead twigs. So we've done our first cut and taken a harvest off the stool, and now this is my kind of second cut to go in a bit deeper. Sometimes you can get in there quite deeply on the first cut, but if you can't, you have to kind of go back and tidy everything up, because each one of these cut stems will produce new shoots. So a thin stem like this one will produce shoots which will be very insubstantial. They'll be very weak, thin ones, which aren't, you know, what we want out of this willow. This willow is a vigorous willow, and it's good for doing big projects. So we don't want lots of small, thin stuff from these stools. We're wanting big rods from these stools. So I go through cutting the stool back again, and I'm taking out the dead wood as well, because the dead wood will rot down and cause decay in the centre of the stool. So I'm just getting in there, tidying it all up. It's worthwhile doing this because it'll mean that your coppice stools last a lot longer and you get a better quality of crop off them. You need air circulating. Willows are really susceptible to rust and to canker, so you kind of need some space in the centre of the stool for the air to flow around all the rods as they grow. So I'm just going to work away at this, and even the dead grass, pull that off, and there should be a mulch around the base of your coppice, because willow does not like to be shaded out by weeds. It's a very light demanding tree, and it doesn't tolerate shade at all. You can see from this footage, during last year's growth phase of the coppice stool, lots of grasses and weeds grew up around it and eventually fell onto the stool itself. So if they're not removed, they tend to rot down and cause decay to enter the coppice stool. I've been cutting back the thick stems as well to get as close as I can, and just to kind of finish the stool off now. There's just a couple of thin ones left over in the middle, and as you gradually kind of cut back at stuff, you can get deeper and deeper and create more space in the middle of the stool. So we'll just cut back that section there, and I'm cutting back the dead ones as well, and the big thick ones on the side, basically getting in as close as I can. You can see from these cut stumps or stools that I've been trying to get in as close as I possibly can to the stool. I've cleared all the leaf litter away from it that was there, because that rots down into soil and that invites infection and bacteria to enter the cut surfaces. And I've cut back as many of the little kind of pegs, the hat pegs, as I possibly can, and just tidied the stump up really nicely when I've finished harvesting. If you look, that's the coppice bed that we've finished harvesting. So that's us done now. I've just got to remove some of the twigs that are left remaining on the ground next to the coppice stools, but they've all been cut back hard with no bits left on them, no leaves, no dead grass, and so that's the work done. Quite a lot of work in that. This is some of the willow that we've harvested from the strip of willow woodland on the outskirts of Dundee, and you can see it's all been nicely graded into thick rods which are suitable for making coracles, and they're about 1 inch to 1.5 inches in diameter at the thick end, and quite a few of them are over 8 feet tall, and that's just 1 year's growth. Coppicing is a form of sustainable woodland management that's gone on for nearly 4,000 years, going back to Neolithic times, and it consisted of cutting the tree down to a cut stump just above ground level. And if you did it carefully, what happens is that cut stump produces new shoots from all round the stump, from the buds that are just below the bark. And those shoots can then grow into poles and into thicker trunks. So it then becomes a multi-stemmed tree or shrub once you've cut it down to ground and allowed it to grow on again. And coppice woodlands were divided up into compartments or coops, and each compartment would be cut on a rotation. So if it was hazel, it would be cut every 8 to 12 years. If it was oak, it would be cut every 20 to 25 years, depending on the tree and depending on what kind of
products you were going to make from the harvest poles.